Good morning, and welcome to Sunday School for the young and the young at heart. Today we'll conclude the story of Joseph. So let's first review and see where we have left Joseph. As you might remember, Joseph was the son of Jacob. And Jacob loved Joseph very much, so he had to make a coat of many colors for Joseph. Then he asked Joseph to go check on his brothers who were taking care of the sheep in a faraway place. So Joseph went to see his brothers and had to really look for him. Remember, he went to two different places. And his brother saw him coming far off, and they said, "Let's kill him. We don't like him. He got the beautiful coat from our father, and our father loves him better than all of us. So let's kill him." And Reuben had a good idea. He wanted to save Joseph. So he said, "Let's just throw Joseph in a well." Now his idea was that he would come back later and rescue him. So the brothers said, "Oh, that's a good idea. Then we'll have no bloodshed. So we'll take his coat and put some blood on it and tell our father that an animal got him." And then they sat down to have lunch. So as they were having lunch, a caravan from Egypt came by. And they decided, well, heck, we could sell him and get 30 shekels of gold or of silver. So that's what they did. And so he went to the house of Potiphar. And there was the king, Potiphar, and his wife. And he worked as a servant. Now, Mrs. Potiphar took a real liking to Joseph, and she made a pass at him. But he said no and ran out of the room. And as he was running, she grabbed his clothes, so he ended up just in his underwear. And when her husband came home, she told him that it was Joseph that made the pass. And so Joseph was thrown in jail. But while he was there, two men were thrown in. One was the baker and one was the wine steward. And they both had dreams. And they didn't know what those dreams meant. So Joseph interpreted them. He told the baker that he was going to die. He was going to be beheaded. That's what his dream meant. And the wine steward, he says that in a few days you're going to be freed and live a wonderful life. And you know, that's what happened. So as the wine steward is leaving, Joseph said, "Tell them about me." He's wanting to get out of jail. But as soon as the guy got out of jail, he completely forgot about Joseph until the king was having dreams. And he couldn't find anyone in the land who could tell him what those dreams meant. All of his important people, no one quite knew. The wine steward happened to be in that day, and he heard the talk, and that reminded him of Joseph. So he told the king about Joseph, and they hurried down to the jail, gave him a nice set of clothes, combed his hair, put a little deodorant on, whatever. And he goes to the king, and the king says, "Well, let me tell you about my dreams." He said, one dream was that there were 7 ugly cows, or 7 beautiful cows, I'm sorry. And they came out of the river and they stood there and they were eating grass. They were just beautiful. And then 7 more cows came up out of the river, but they were thin and ugly. And the 7 ugly cows ate the 7 pretty cows. And then the king woke up. When the king went back to sleep, he had another dream. And this time, he saw 7 full good heads of grain growing on one stalk. And then one other stalk came and ate all the 7 grains. And the king woke up again. And he realized that it was only a dream, and the next morning he had asked everybody, what about those dreams? And so when Joseph heard the dreams, he knew exactly what they meant. He said, both dreams have come from God, and he's telling you about what to do about the next 7 years. The 7 good heads of grain stood for 7 years that we will have very good harvest. And the 7 cattle, that they'll have 7 years that they can really eat, and then there'll be another 7 years of bad, not much to eat. So the king says, well, what am I to do? David and Joseph said, oh, you need to choose a man that's very wise and understanding, and set him out over all the foods of Egypt. So let the king appoint this officer, and they should take 1/5 of all the food that's grown and store it away for the next 7 years. And this food, and during the 7 years of hunger, then we can serve it. Now this seemed like a really good idea to the king, and all of his officers agreed. And the king said, can we ever find a man better than Joseph to do this job? So Joseph was put in charge, and they had 7 good years, and when things were going well, Potiphar gave Joseph his daughter to be his wife, and Joseph became an Egyptian. And then the 7 years of bad hunger came, and people were hungry everywhere, and Joseph opened the storehouses and sold the grain to the people in Egypt. And then it hit the whole world. And Jacob, you remember Jacob way back at the beginning? Jacob is the father of Joseph. And he said to the brothers, you go and ask the king for grain. Buy some grain off the king. And he says, I want you all to go, except for Benjamin, the younger son. I'm not going to let him go. We've already lost one, so he can't go. So the 7 brothers go down to Egypt, and they ask to speak to the man in charge. Think of him as the governor over Egypt. He was the one people saw to come and buy the food. So Joseph goes in and he recognizes his brothers. And so he wasn't real nice to him. He accused them of being spies in the land, and he asked about their family and if his dad is still alive, but he said, your father. So on the 3rd day, Joseph said to them, I'm a God-fearing man. Do this thing and I will let you live. If you are honest men let one of my brothers stay here in prison, and the rest can go back, feed your families. So, but the next time you come, you need to bring Benjamin. And Joseph was really sneaky. He used an interpreter to hear what his brothers were saying. But he already knew he could understand the language. But he didn't want them to figure out who he was. So anyway, the guys go away, and they get home, and they eat the grain, and when it's all gone, Jacob says, go back and get more grain. And they said, we're not going back without Benjamin because they think we're spies, and if we don't have Benjamin, they'll lock us all up in prison. But then Reuben came to him and said, anyway, Reuben came and said, you may put 2 of my sons to death if we don't bring Benjamin back to you, and I will take care of him. But Jacob said, nope, I'm not going to let him go. Not yet. So things got a little bit more tight, and Judah said to Jacob, the governor has warned us very strong. If we don't bring our brother back, you will not be allowed to see me, which means we can't get any food. If you send Benjamin, we can buy food. So Jacob said, why did you tell him there was another brother at home? And the brothers said, well, he questioned us very carefully about our families, and he even asked if you were still alive, and he asked if there were more brothers, and we answered him truthfully. And Judah said, send me with Benjamin, and we'll go down, and we will guarantee his life. Then Jacob said, well, if it has to be that way, then do it. So the brothers and Benjamin went down to see Joseph. And at this point, Joseph was the head of everything. So they get down there, and they're told that they need to go to Joseph's house. And they're very scared because remember he had put money in there were money in their sacks. So they get to the door, and there's a servant, and they just say, hey, we didn't know it was there, that we didn't steal it, there was nothing. And the servant said, hey, it's okay. God must have put it there. We got our payment. And so then Joseph comes in. And he saw his brother Benjamin, who had the same mother as Joseph. And he asked, are you the youngest brother? And Benjamin said yes. And then Joseph said, God's been good to you, my son. And then he hurriedly left the room. And he went into another room and he cried. And when he got himself under control, he came back in and they ate. And so he said the next morning, after the dinner, he gave a servant a command, said, fill the men's sack with as much grain as they can carry, and put each man's money back into the sack of grain. Put my silver cup in the sack of the youngest brother, and also put his money in for the put his money in the grain sack. And the servant ran and did what he was told to do. So, the servant said, I will do as you say, but only the man who takes the cup will become my slave. So the brothers didn't know all that. They just thought they were getting grain. Until the servant caught back up with them and said that Benjamin had stolen the cup. And they were going to take him off to prison. But Judah comes in and he says, please speak to me. Please don't be angry with me. We know how powerful you are, but can I take the place of my brother? Because my father is very old and one son has already died. And by taking this son, that would cause our father lots of problems. And I gave him a guarantee that I would be safe. If he doesn't come back, he will blame me all of my life. So please, let me stay here and be your slave and let Benjamin go. I'm sorry, I didn't have Judah up there. So... At this point, Joseph couldn't contain himself anymore, and he cried and he said, have everyone just leave me. And he cried so loud that everyone in the household heard him. And then he said to his brothers, I am Joseph. He said, is my father still alive? He always wondered. And the brothers couldn't answer him because they were afraid of him. So Joseph said, come closer to me. So the brothers did. And again he said, I am your brother Joseph. You sold me into slavery to go to Egypt. But don't worry. He's forgiven them for that. God sent me here so I could save lives of a lot of people. So quickly go and tell my father that the one speaking to you is Joseph. And my brother Benjamin can see this. So tell your father how powerful I've become and bring him back with us. And that's what happened. And as they say in the fairy tales, and they all